Another clean sheet, another game undefeated, but sixth place still tantalisingly away. It was Ipswich 0, Portsmouth 0. This is the Blue Monday podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Blue Monday podcast. Following Ipswich Town, up or down for the last 1,000 years. Joe Fairs, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, thanks, Ben.
And Craig Fimbo down the bottom there. How are you?
Yep, very well. All good. Thank you very much.
If you are tuned in on YouTube, please do hit that like button. It really helps us reach as many people as possible. And thank you to everybody tuned in on Acast or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's dive straight in with some news today and some long-awaited stadium upgrades, Craig. What are we getting?
Exciting, isn't it? Everyone likes seeing the new designs and images.
Well, everyone's like whinging about it for the last 10 years, haven't they? So
yeah. Oh, we've still got people in Joe's stand who are whinging that they can't see the corner. So, and funny enough, we were looking at from our seats just near the tunnel just to see if we can make out the whole screen. I think we're going to be slightly obscured. So yeah, there's going to be a jumbotron or big screen or
Titantron they have in WWE.
60-inch LCD telly stuck in the corner of the Cobbold and South Stand. Yeah, and lovely new Recaro seats in the dugouts for the requisite number of people that the Premier League require. So we won't need to redo that in 3 years' time when we're there. And also advertise. I noticed there's electronic advertising hoardings coming as well. So we're getting the full kit and caboodle.
New PA system, Craig?
New PA. Yes, not Tannoy, obviously. We can't use that term. So, yeah, new PA system. So maybe they'll invite Martin Reuter back and we can hear what he's saying this time round. So, yeah, it's all fantastic news. The guys are putting their money where their mouth is. They said at the beginning, when they joined, that the stadium needed a bit of a overhaul and an upgrade. And this is sort of the first steps towards it.
I understand everybody's happy, but, Joe, it's about time, isn't it? Come on.
It is. Like I say, you go round sort of some of these small League One grounds, like you go to Accrington and they've got a big screen up, and Fleetwood, I think, did as well. And it is a little bit embarrassing that it goes like that. I think there's only one Premier League team that doesn't have one, which is Liverpool. Strangely, they don't have one there. But it's just about time.
Like selling hospitality, yeah.
Yeah, but the guys so far they've sort of picked off the low-hanging fruit, and the stadium does look much better with regards to the sort of graphics they've put all around the sort of east stand and north stand, and around there the flags going down the main entrance. And it is just those little steps, but just none of those little steps had been taken under Marcus Evans for the majority of his tenure. We just didn't do anything. So we're having to sort of we've got quite a lot of catching up to do, but it's good that they're doing it. They've been saying for a number of years about the pitch that it just would take a sort of like £1 million investment to get it up to what it's needed. So that's why we never did it, and we just try and get as much as we can out of it every year. And you have a couple of games in bad weather, and then all of a sudden your pitch is struggling for the next 6 weeks because it just isn't built to take it. So it's great that they are spending the money, even though on the pitch maybe things haven't gone to plan so far. They're still pushing ahead with the other bits of the plan that is needed.
It'd be interesting to know, wouldn't it, how much capital it's going to cost to get these bits and pieces done. And as you say, Joe, the pitch is upwards of £1 million as far as we're aware, but then to invest, knocking down the corner and rerouting the power cables and getting this jumbotron in, it's a fair amount of advertising they're going to have to bring in from Rex Records, Queen Street, Ipswich, isn't it?
Science Express.
To stick in the coffers to fund it all. But fair play, as you say. It's not as if we're guaranteed to go up or anything, but they're still putting the foundations in, the infrastructure to hopefully see it.
Because the digital advertising boards, we obviously had those in when we had the FA Cup game against Southampton, didn't we? Back when it was live on BBC One, so we had those in for that. But you do wonder where they're going to fit in, because it's not the widest of pitches, is it, down there? And I noticed the other week, like the pitch is wider now since McKenna's come in. We have edged it out
They're normally quite
a
high
couple of
as well,
feet as much as we've
Joe,
been able to. Are we going to need to take the actual advertising
Yeah.
boards off the front of the stands and put them in place of that, as opposed to just a structure in front of them? I'd imagine it would be the former.
Yeah.
Joe, I know you're quite well up on this. Is that good FFP money? Infrastructure around stadium.
Yeah, it always has been. Yeah, that sort of spending has always been seen as good FFP money.
Yeah. It's less good news, Craig. George Edmondson is not going to be about for a while.
No, and that seemed pretty obvious, didn't it, from the stills we saw or the slow mo of him going over his ankle. I don't know. I've done it to both my ankles, and probably don't get the same amount of treatment, post-care treatment that George is going to get. I was basically done my DMs up a little bit tighter back in the early 90s and got a crutch to wobble around on for a little while. But ankle ligaments, if going over on that, not only does it hurt like hell, they're a pain in the bum to get right as well. So he was wandering around yesterday in his moon boot, fully strapped up, sort of thing. So he'll be getting the right treatment, but you can't imagine him. That may well be him for the season, mightn't it? Once they go and they're weak, I don't think they'll want to rush anyone back because they're tendency to go again, haven't they?
Well, you're looking 6 to 8 weeks, aren't you, minimum for that sort of injury? And if it's the sort of middle of that, you're basically the end of the season there. And it's like, are you going to rush him back for one game, especially if there's nothing riding? If we're in the playoffs and you want to get him back, then you might have a chance that way. But you're not going to rush him back just for a dead rubber at the end of the season, are you? You're going to say get yourself right for coming back in pre-season. And hopefully, as obviously, spoiler alert, I know we've already said, but we kept a clean sheet yesterday without him, and I thought Cameron Burgess stepped in well. So hopefully it's just an opportunity for him to stay inside and do well and give McKenna some questions to ask.
I know it's hard to quantify, Craig, but how much does this weaken us?
Well, as Joe said, I don't think of all the positions that currently have injuries in them, that's probably the one where we've got a near enough like-for-like replacement in Burgess, who was perfectly adequate yesterday. I thought he was indeed could have been man of the match. He did everything he needed to do, won all of his headers, I think, pretty much apart from one. You could tell that was a strong point from him yesterday. He played the ball simply. He didn't get us forward as much as Edmondson does, but then he doesn't need to because it's happening on the other side, isn't it? Danassian and Burns are doing it the other side. I'm more concerned about the hole the gaping hole that Morsey leaves, especially when you haven't got Evans with him, and then also Jackson potentially as well. So I think of all the positions that are currently needing replacements, that's probably the one where we're most covered.
You agree with that, Joe?
Yeah, I guess maybe the other one would be if Wes Burns got injured as well. That would be one where you'd really struggle to have someone with that impact. Yeah, but I think yesterday's was the proof, effectively, really, that Burgess can step in and do a similar standard job there, and it sort of gives you that natural left-sided balance. Anyway, it's not to say that Edmondson isn't going to be a big miss because he's been a very good player all season for us, but it could have been a lot worse. Like I say, when you saw that Edmondson and Morsey were out, if you wanted one of those to be out for 8 weeks from the other one, you'd have said Edmondson rather than Sam Morsey, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. We will get into the Pompey game. I'm trying to do a good chicken link here, so get your drumsticks and drum roll, please.
With wings more crisp than a James Norwood finish, ribs meatier than Sam Morsey tackle, and chicken tastier than Wes Burns, favourite is Britain's tastiest chicken. And as a listener of the Blue Monday podcast, you can get 20% off by entering BM20 at the checkout. Order direct from their menu at chicken-ipswich.co.uk. They'll deliver anywhere within a 2.7 mile radius of the store. And if you're not quite as local as the Bond family, you can click and collect. The store is located just off Hadley Road. Favourite, Britain's tastiest chicken.
Ipswich Pompey then, Joe, and we've lamented and whinged and moaned on this podcast over many years that when Ipswich get in a, quote, big game against a rival, a must-win game, use whatever language you're comfortable with, they don't win it. Was this a big game against Pompey, who in most of the sort of, you look at the 6, 8, 10, 12 game form table, pretty maybe 8 game form table. I think they're top of it now after yesterday. What were your thoughts going into this game, Joe, in respects of a barometer, a measuring stick for where we are right now?
I guess you we obviously knew we sort of needed to win really because of where we are in the table, but it's just strange to have such confidence in a manager that you sort of feel that whatever we put out, we're gonna probably be the better side against anyone we play in this division, and that's how it feels at the moment, and it has been the case for a number of weeks, and yesterday was no exception. Everyone is the way they sort of come here and are so happy with a point against us at Portman Road. It shows just what respect we're getting from these teams at the moment. We seem to be able to set a game plan up that just cuts these other teams off at source and just leaves us just a better side. And I think we did that again yesterday, but obviously there's the issue that we didn't score. We didn't score again.
What were your thoughts going in, Craig, in terms of the importance side of it, given it's against another club who we would consider a big club for League One level in good form?
Yeah, well, exactly that. As Joe was saying, that, or as you were saying, sorry, about the form table, I think they'd won however many, 6 out of the last 7 or something, but I think 5 out of those, 5 out of those had been at home, so it was a bit difficult to know what they would be like away from home. And as it turned out, as Joe said, they seem to be pretty intent and content to settle for a point, which is only a good sign from our perspective. If you think that these are teams that in and around the playoffs that are supposedly big clubs in League One, and they're coming here and blatantly playing for a point from early doors, especially when the team that they're playing, i.e. us, is missing 2 or 3, and in the end probably 4 integral players to this, what would be their first choice starting 11.
And also, when they needed to win, really, as well. They're in the same position as we are in the table, and a draw doesn't really do them much good, but they were still really happy with a point to stop us. So it sort of shows how much respect we're getting at the moment.
As Joe says about, sorry, Ben, but as Joe says about us holding other teams at arm's length, it's happening pretty much every game where teams aren't getting near us, teams aren't cutting us open. We're just negating them. It's just, unfortunately, it's just that flip side of it, being able to make the most of it out the other end of the pitch currently.
Joe, I'm not trying to gotcha you or anything, but you've been quite high on the Cowleys throughout when we've spoken on the pod. Where are you on them now? Because obviously we first met them when they were at Lincoln, and then with the Bright Young Things, and then had that season at West Brom. And frankly, the decision of West Brom to put Corberon in looks like a good one.
Yeah.
Huddersfield to put Corberon in looks like a good one now, doesn't it? And is the bloom off the rose a little bit for the Cowleys now? And has your view changed a little bit from, because you were quite high on them, weren't you?
Yeah, no, I think they've still done a decent job wherever they've been. I know Huddersfield have gone on under Corberon, but ultimately he kept them up from a pretty dangerous position they were in. They were sort of down, really, weren't they? And to keep them up from that, and then they sort of left there with their head held high, without a doubt. And I think at Portsmouth, I'd imagine their fans are thinking the same as well. Like, they had quite a slow start to the season, didn't they? And I think they had to have a real sort of... The budget must be cut when you look at the players they had last year to the players they've got this year. So I'd imagine they've sort of tightened the budget up, and they're there or thereabouts this season. I think they'll probably be a little bit disappointed that they're not 4 or 5 points better off, but ultimately they've still got a couple of games in hand on us, haven't they? So they're not out of the playoff race. And I think if they did get Portsmouth back into the top 6, I think they could point to the job that they've done as another very good job. So I think they're still good managers, and I think they're doing a good job at Portsmouth.
Sure. Let's have a look at the team news then, Craig. So for Town, Walton in goal, Danassian, Wolfend and Burgess. I guess we've kind of covered that already. Thompson, Burns, Morsey, Backinson, Selina, Chaplin, Jackson. Is that what you would have done, Craig?
Yes, probably with the players that we had available and the fitness being what it is. I think obviously you'd probably want Aluko in there, but having played midweek, he probably was going to struggle to squeeze in 2 games in 5 days. But I think everyone else pretty much picks themselves. Backinson was obviously in. Is that maybe his first home start? Possibly. I think he's started a lot of away games, hasn't he? Obviously with a lot of different partners. But the best news is probably that Sam Morsey was back. So that was probably the name everyone was looking out for on the team sheet at 2:00.
You agree, Joe?
Yep, I think the club knew that as well, because when they announce a team sheet, they have to pick the player that they have standing there with their arms crossed next to it, and that was Sam Morsey there. So I think that was Sam is back, and McKenna after the game said there wasn't really a risk. There wasn't really a high risk in playing him there. He was pretty much good to go.
Let's have a look at the bench quickly, and then we'll go into the Pompey team. So, Gladkey, Vincent Young, Carroll, Aluko, Norwood, Pigott, and Bon on the bench. Joe, for Pompey, I'll read the team. Let me know if you like anyone in there. Anyone sort of stood out going into the game, and maybe after the game as well. Bazunu in goal, Carter, Raggett, Robertson, Ogilvie, Romeo, Thompson, Tunnicliffe, Curtis, Hurst, yes, son of, and O'Brien. Anyone you like in that Pompey team?
Well, George Hurst was highly rated as a youngster, wasn't he? But he's had a sort of quite a strange career now.
Not well liked at Rotherham on that loan, actually.
No, and he hasn't had a good senior career. But in the last sort of 6 weeks, he's actually found his goal scoring boots and has scored maybe like 5 in 5 or something along those lines. It's like, and I thought he led the line really well yesterday. I thought he did a good job up there, and without really a huge amount of support. But Ronan Curtis is always a player that can cause us problems. He's a decent player, but I felt him playing centrally rather than out on the left did really sort of negate his influence on the game, because often he's played out on that left for us and he's been really dangerous coming inside, and they've had Harness on one side, him on the other. But I don't know, I just thought I expected a bit more of him yesterday, and he didn't really deliver, which is good for us, obviously.
Anyone filling you with fear there, Craig, pre-game?
No, well, just the names. Obviously, Aidan O'Brien you see as the name, don't you? And as Joe said, Curtis always seems to play well against us. And probably a good job that Harness was sent off last week, so missed this one. Just a little snippet about George Hurst. I was on holiday in Faliraki in 1993, and his father was there in Faliraki.
Is this the fabled Manchester United £5 million bid or post?
No, he was wearing a bandana for the whole week. If that's any
Okay.
any help.
He was a player though, wasn't he, Craig?
Very good player. Yeah, a hell of a
England.
left foot, wasn't he? Yeah. One of those like initial early Premier League superstars, wasn't he, David Hurst?
You love it, don't you? Craig, talk to me about the first half. What went down?
Well, I think, to be fair to Portsmouth, they were in our faces, weren't they, from the off, and they were very much pressing us, pushing us back. They were very quick getting to Donasian in particular. I thought that they were sort of cutting off that line between him and Burns very effectively, and all over the pitch. To be fair, they were pressing us quite high. I think, to be fair, they were probably the team this season since McKenna's taken over that were, well, for that 45 minutes, the most effective pressing team that we played against. Certainly that high up the pitch, they really were pressing us back. And it was 8 minutes in that Morsey initially pulled up, sadly, with his holding his hamstring, and the collective sigh went round the crowd.
What did you make of the first half, Joe?
Yeah, I thought it was quite an even game. I thought we had sort of the better of the play, but they probably had the best chance of the game, didn't they? The one that sort of fell to Hurst low in the box, which sort of was blocked by a combination of defender and Walton. But yeah, no, I thought they did well in pinning us back, really, which was sort of we seemed to work it out as a half went on. We got better as a half went on, but there was a couple of times where we got caught a little bit in possession, and they hit us quickly on quick counters, sort of 2 or 3 times in there. One which led to the chance, which I just mentioned there. But yeah, like when Morsey went down, that was obviously a big blow, and then he sort of carried on. But I'm always a bit wary that when he went down, because there was no one around him when he went down, he'd just gone for a run and then had quite a bit of treatment, really. And then he sort of stayed on. I thought, well, okay, strange. And then
he looked nowhere near fit. Did he? Once he'd done it, he went for a sprint forward, didn't he, with the ball, and that's when it went. And then, but for some reason, and then Carroll was straight away told to go and get fit, go and run up, get yourself loose, sort of thing. But they kept asking Morsey if he was okay, rather than taking him. They kept asking. We could see from the touchline out, and they were saying, "No, let us know." And he was sort of saying, "Yeah, I'm all right." But he couldn't run, could he? He couldn't sprint. He basically just sat in for 10 minutes or 8 minutes, however much longer it was he was on the pitch. He couldn't get to tackles. He certainly couldn't break forward. I was just a bit concerned.
He was sat down, didn't he, then? And
yeah.
So what's the prognosis? What were you thinking, Craig?
Well, McKenna said afterwards that, again, as Joe said, that he'd said before the match that he was okay. And obviously he'd gone through the test yesterday, and he'd gone through the pre-match warm-up and bits and pieces like that without any ill effect. But after the match, McKenna seemed to say, again, it's not serious. It's not a tear or a strain. You just felt it tighten. So maybe if he can get a week of treatment under his belt,
Yeah.
then he might be right for next
We are
weekend.
down to the one game a week now, aren't we? Now, so he's got 6 days, then a game, then another 6 days break. So you think that hopefully you'll be able to get through that.
And they were doing everything they can to get him in the team because obviously Evans is still missing. So you don't look at it from that perspective. But I just thought it took us until half time to sort of recover and get used to him not being there, because Carroll came on and didn't do too much first half. He came into it second half, and similar. It seemed to sort of knock Backinson a little bit in the first half as well. It just, as it would do, just
why is
left
that,
a massive. I just think they just couldn't, because Carroll hadn't been training, had he, with the team this week. He hadn't been in any of the meetings, any of the like setup and tactical meetings or anything like that. So I just think it was a case of them sort of getting used to the way that they should be playing with each other and getting used to Portsmouth being right in their faces from the off as soon as Carroll came on the pitch. But I think they grew into it after half time. But I think just getting to the end of the half as 0-0.
And Caden Jackson as well, Joe.
Yeah, you could tell that was a bad one straight away, because he sort of flies down the line, gets in, gets a good chance, good save from the keeper, gets that well and makes a good
keeper
save.
gets his angles. He shows him the near post, doesn't he? And
but then he just doesn't get up, and he's calling him on, and the board goes up saying there's 3 minutes of added on time whilst he's, I think, either on the ground or when he was
right
going
in front
through
of you,
on
right,
goal.
Joe?
Yeah, it's right in front of us, and the fact that he was subbed off rather than just like, oh, we're in stoppage time now, should we just wait till half time and then see if you're all right for the second half? He like I say, he got injured in the 46th minute and went off in the 47th minute. There was no like, let's wait 2 minutes, see how he is at half time. And he was like pulling his shirt up over his head and looking to the heavens almost. You could tell he knew it was a serious one. And at the pace he goes, you can only guess he's torn his hamstring or strained his hamstring, and that is going to be his season over as well.
Yeah. He as he was getting down the tunnel, I sent a photo and took it in. He basically took his shirt off and just slung it to the floor and screamed to the heavens, just for pure frustration. He just got himself into the team. He's out of contract in the summer. That could well be the last you see of him, couldn't it?
Let us know on Twitter and in the comments. Is that, sadly, the last you'll see of Caden Jackson? It's not an unreasonable sort of position, Craig, I don't think, is it? Second half, then, let's go with you, Joe, and I suppose we're all building up to this disallowed goal at the end. Yeah, well,
I think Portsmouth's press just seemed to slow down a bit over the sort of first 10 to 15 minutes of the second half, and then once it got to about an hour, they just did not press at all, really. After that, they just camped back in, time wasted, feigned injury, just really, really slowed the game down, which made it a pretty tough watch at times. And they did enough, effectively. We had the goal that was disallowed. I know McKenna said that VAR would have allowed the goal, and somebody's filmed it from behind, and you can see that it's Wolfie who is offside from one angle, and then you can see that he doesn't touch the ball and Burgess gets there. But for me, yeah, it was a wrongly disallowed goal, but I'd rather probably lose the odd goal like that rather than have VAR on every game, because, like I said, I don't think it's not a howler from the referee and the linesman, is it? Who I did think were pretty poor generally, but I don't think they've had a howler there. It's just a tough one to see. Both of them go for the ball. One of them was offside, one wasn't. And you sometimes aren't going to get everything right, are you?
I've been shuffling along the IFAB website while you've spoken, and the wording is as follows in terms of interfering with play, because this is what we're talking about. As Wolfenden doesn't touch the ball, if he's not interfering with play, he's not offside, ergo goal should stand. So it says on the IFAB website, interfering with play by playing or touching a ball passed by ball passed or touched by a teammate. So that's a no. He didn't do that. Interfering with an opponent. Well, he doesn't interfere with an opponent, does he? By preventing an opponent from playing or being able to play the ball. No. Clearly obstructing the line of vision, peripheral vision of the goalkeeper, but not line of vision to the ball. Challenging an opponent for the ball. No. Clearly attempting to play a ball which is close when this action impacts on an opponent. If that didn't say impacts on an opponent, I think they've got him, but it only impacts on Burgess, doesn't it? Making an obvious action which clearly impacts on the ability of an opponent to play the ball, or gaining an advantage by playing the ball or interfering. Their wording's kind of tied them up in knots there for this type of situation, Craig. It's a bit of an outlier, isn't it, when it's two attacking players going together? Because if it had been an opponent, I think this would have been disallowed. But I can't see anything in it. And
but even yesterday, though, you see the Man United Spurs game, and Harry Maguire scores an own goal because somebody puts a cross across to an offside player, and Maguire dives in to try and stop the ball going to the player, and that's
he is impacting an opponent, isn't he?
Yeah. But that's not giving us offside. It's basically you have to touch the ball or do something very, very obvious, which that wasn't. So that should have been allowed. But like I say, I don't think it's one that you can really.
We're in the grey area here, Craig, aren't we?
Yeah, but it would have been allowed had it gone to VAR, but I don't think in real time from the referee was you couldn't really have told, I'm sure, whether it was Wolfenden or whether it was Bagson that actually touched the ball. They both basically had the same action towards the ball at the same time, in a crowd of bodies. It'd been, and there's no way the linesman could have seen it from where he was standing. He'd just seen that a body was offside and that body was then near the ball, which came back, which knocked it back across the box. So, don't get me wrong, I'm all for giving referees pelters, but it would have been a tough one to give in real time, to get it right in real time.
I can't believe there's nothing on IFAB that says makes a motion to play the ball, because Wolfenden does kind of make a motion to play the ball, in which case they would have grounds to disallow it. I think it's one of these. I'm very pro VAR, I have to say. I get a lot of pelters for it, but yeah, the wordings often, or rather not the wordings tie us up in knots. It's the wordings and the fans' knowledge of the wordings as opposed to the person doing the VAR, who's often doing what they're told, but the fans haven't got a clue why they're disallowing it. So there you go. Frustrating, Joe. It flashed up on my phone as I was doing my stream here. It would have been a really big goal and a really big moment and a really big win, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I think it would have been deserved as well. And I think that sort of Portsmouth's conduct during the second half was went too far, really, for me, the time wasting element of it. I'd say there was one where they had a throw in on the side and someone just kicks the ball back to the keeper. The keeper stops the ball and then just leaves it there. So like Bon has to go across and get the ball and give it back to the throw-in taker, who then lets the ball bounce off the advertising hoardings and go back past him. And another one, Chaplin give someone the ball and they managed to sort of drop it and fumble it away. And there was obviously the incident with Danny Cowley and Dominic Thompson on the touchline as well, which was sort of heated to say the least at one point, which again was Danny Cowley knowing exactly what he was doing, stepping back into Thompson, and maybe Thompson overreacting slightly. He seemed to lose his head a little bit because he went for Connor Chaplin. I think Kieran McKenna tried to calm him down. He nearly shut Kieran McKenna down on the ground as well. So maybe he did lose his head a bit there, didn't he? But
they were at it. They were at it from minute one in the technical area, because I've said many times, I look that direction across to the far goal at the north stand, and it's basically in my eye line. And they were like Lee Johnson and his Sunderland merry mob were in the technical area. Every single decision, they're in the fourth official's ear. Everyone, regardless of if it's the right one, the wrong one for Ipswich, for the opposition, they're in his ear. And if it's not Cowley, it's his brother. And if it's not his brother, it's the other guy, their coach, whoever he happens to be. Cowley spent the entire game outside his technical area. He was a yard out of it. Just for the sake of being a yard out of it, he'd be a yard out of it. The fourth official goes and tells him to come back in. He stands out of it again. He turns around. He's gobbling off at the crowd. They're a team built in the manager's image, shall we say. And as Joe said, he knew exactly what he was doing when Thompson's trying to take a quick attacking throw by running behind Cowley, because Cowley's standing outside the technical area in the way where Dominic Thompson should have been standing to take the throw. So Thompson runs behind him. Danny Cowley takes his opportunity to, for the first time in 90 minutes, to step back into his technical area where Dominic Thompson's running. So they knew what they were up to, and it just goes to show you sort of I think you just need to take it as a compliment that they need to play that way to stop us from playing and getting into our stride and stopping the tempo. And the only way to stop teams from doing that is to get in the lead, isn't it?
I do think there is a real sort of general football issue at the moment with time wasting in games that makes these what is a sort of spectator sport almost unwatchable at times when you sit there. It seems like it's really gone. And I think maybe because the refs in this league are quite weak as well, that we're seeing it a lot more, that in the Premier League and the Championship, I don't notice it being as bad. They obviously try it on a bit more, but maybe the refs stop it, where it just seems in League One every week there's teams that all they do is just act like this all game. And I appreciate teams have got to play to their strengths and do what they can to do the game down. But there's gamesmanship, and there's trying to play games in your style and input your style onto the game. And then there's this, and I don't know. I find it incredibly frustrating to watch. I don't think we're a team that's ever really been like that, no matter who our manager is. Even someone like Mick McCarthy, who someone would say is an ultra pragmatist. We've always been quite an honest team for the last sort of 20, 25 years that I've been watching. Like, we haven't ever been a snarky, horrible team to watch, have we, in that way? But I don't know. It does just feel football has got a big problem at the moment with time wasting, and something that has to be done.
I think it's just one of those things whereby we are, such a big team in this league that we are going to see teams come to our home ground and play like that by virtue of them just needing to get anything out of the game, aren't they? Unfortunately, I say until such times you score in the first 5 minutes, first half of the game, it's just going to get worse and worse the closer you get to the end of the game, isn't it? By virtue of them just hanging on.
The only thing that will make any kind of, I can think of three things: real hefty yellow card sanctions, that board going up and having 10 minutes stoppage time on it at the end, or we'll have our old favourite conversation, Joe, about real-time stop clocks and whatnot. What were your takeaways generally then, Craig, other than being disappointed about the injured players?
I thought we played well. I think it's refreshing to see us play the way we are. They stick to their principles. They kept going to the final whistle just by playing the same way. And even if we didn't maybe create any proper gilt-edge chances, we still did get through them and get behind them without our first choice centre midfield pairing, without one of our first choice centre halves, without our current in-form striker as well. So you got looking at it with all those factors. I think it was just a very good performance. It was just unfortunately missing the goal. It just felt like the first half, especially, like a proper edgy, even sort of tactical game, which obviously, as Joe said, sort of they obviously just ran out of puff, I think, and just sat in for the majority of the second half till the end of the match. But it just felt for the first time in a little while like harking back to when we were challenging at the top of the Championship, just like a proper one goal is going to be in this sort of quite tight
end of season.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Top of the table clash. It was quite nice to be involved in those. But I just thought we played well again. And McKenna stays cool on the touchline. He just gets them to keep playing the way they are. He's got so much trust in the way that his team's going to play that eventually it's going to come good. If not this year, then next. That we just keep going. You can just tell they're just there was just some points I was saying to Joe before we joined that there were some points where we played such nice, lovely one-touch football, and all of a sudden we're in the box. It's come from Walton to Donasian, and then 4 or 5 passes and phases of play later, we're in the corner. We're in the channel next to in the box. It's happening more and more and more often. We just need that final pass or assist or just a clinical shot to finish them off.
And for me, like we've been in this league for 3 years now, and this is probably the first. Well, it is without doubt the first time where I think we are one of, if not the best team in the league at the moment. And I'm sure probably Sheffield Wednesday fans would have that argument with us, maybe Rotherham as well. But I don't think there's any team now that we go and play that we probably don't look the better side against over 90 minutes. We might not get the win, but we just look like we're rolling, really, don't we? And I think I've sort of mentioned it sort of on Twitter, a couple of conversations I had on there. I think we're going to run out of road this season, but we're 9 unbeaten now. Since McKenna's come in, we've conceded 5 goals in 15 games, 8 clean sheets in the last 9. Like, yeah, goals are a problem, but we just look an absolute well-oiled machine at the moment. And I could see us not losing a game till the end of the season here, and probably maybe still not making the playoffs because we might win 5 and draw 3 or something like that. But so I'm sure at some point we're going to chuck in a stinker at some point. We did maybe at Bolton a few weeks back, but that was very early on in McKenna's reign. And other than sort of Sheffield Wednesday game, and they are a good side. Sheffield Wednesday. We are just.
But even then, Sheffield Wednesday, we're going away with Backinson and El Mazzuni as your central midfield pairing because you haven't got Morsey and Evans there, whereas they've got Bannon and Luongo playing centre midfield.
Yeah, that's a massive difference.
And then we only lose 1-0.
And like the record at home, I see Statman put a tweet out, sort of played 7, won 5, drawn 2, conceded 1 goal in that time since.
Well,
McKenna's
I was going to ask next,
Road.
Joe, how impressive is this clean sheet run now? Because we talked about maybe having an identity under Mick McCarthy, attempting to have an identity and failing miserably under Paul Hurst, having an identity for about 5 games at the start of Paul Lambert before he chuck that in and change the formation every week. Having an identity under Paul Cook that just didn't work in the long run. But is this our identity now? Hard to play against, hard to score against, Joe?
Oh, definitely being hard to score. We're just so organised and so solid at the back because whilst you can sometimes keep a few clean sheets, you're sometimes relying on a bit of brilliance from your keeper a couple of times. Like he's got you out of trouble, he saved a penalty here, or done something. We've barely been troubled in those 9 games. I can sort of count on fingers of one hand how many good chances we've conceded in sort of 2 months now, really. And yeah, we're not scoring enough at the other end. That's without a doubt there. But so I spoke to a couple of the former players after the game yesterday who were down for the dinner, and they basically said that they don't watch Ipswich a lot, but they're still in coaching, still doing that. And they said we're so solid, and they're just totally untroubled at the back, but just that hasn't quite got that creativity, something clicking in that final third as yet, which I think we can all see that as the case. And I don't think we've probably got the personnel that McKenna wants in his strikers at the moment. And Jackson was the closest to that in the way he's got that physicality to press and sprint and keep defenders honest. And I don't really think in Bonn or Norwood we've got something that he can work with that well. But I'm sure he'll get the best out of them over the coming few weeks. But just doesn't. We just don't have the right players up there, and those players that he does want or will want are going to be very expensive and very tough to bring in, aren't they?
You just get your take on the defensive record, Craig.
Yeah, what I was going to say is not only are we solid defensively, and as Joe said, it's not as if we're reliant on Walsh. Across most of the games, I could probably play in goal the amount of stuff amount of work he's having to do during 90 minutes, albeit he's doing it very well. But not only we're solid at the back. Donatian's up near the opposing corner flag in like the 91st minute, isn't he? We're still using our wide central defenders as attackers. Wolfenden, with each game, is becoming more and more confident in his role, isn't he? He's strolling out with the ball. So it's not as if, those 3 central defenders are just there to defend. They're all doing their own fair share of attacking as well.
Let's have a look at what went on in League One, and then I'm going to parlay this into the first question that's jumping off the page to me. So, it was a very good day for the chasers right at the top. Wycombe and Rotherham drew 0-0. I suppose Wycombe drawing is something decent for us. Wigan and MK, who were second and third, drew 1-1 as well. Oxford won at Shrewsbury, and we'll talk about Oxford, obviously, with reference to the next game. Sunderland were huffing and puffing, but in the end beat Crewe. Plymouth had a good win, actually, at Bolton. That was a result that went against us particularly. Sheffield Wednesday won 6-0 and still aren't in the playoff position. I think they were fifth for a lot of it, and then gradually Sunderland and Plymouth went past them as the day went on. So Ipswich behind Wycombe, 38 played, 60 points, 5 off the playoffs. And I'm going to go straight to question from Mark here, and I'm going to offer a bit of advice to Ipswich fans, actually. So Mark asks, final position and points forecast. And look, obviously, anyone can do what they like, but I've driven myself slowly insane doing points forecasts in this situation now. And my advice to Ipswich fans, and you don't have to take it, but my advice would be stop doing it. Stop doing it. Stop looking at the playoffs. Stop doing calculations and all this thing. You can if you want, obviously. This is just my advice. We're playing well. The manager's output is 31 points from 15 games. If that 2 points per game keeps up, there's 8 games left. That will take you to 76 points. if we finish with 74 points or above, wherever that position is, then start looking at the league table. And if a few people have had a bit of a nightmare, then maybe we'll be close. But I kind of making the same point as Joe. I almost think, don't judge this on the league table now. Judge it on Kieran McKenna's points per game. What you're seeing, this is the first season in forever, it seems like, we're actually finishing a season well. You know, it's just not been like that. When was the last time we finished a season, even in the playoff season when we got in 14-15? We didn't finish the season well, did we? It's a very hard season, but it wasn't the peak of our season. So, obviously, I'm not having a pop at Mark, who's asked the question here, but my advice would be that we almost need to not focus on where we are in relation to the other teams that have been decent all season. We need to focus on where we are in relation to where we were before Kieran McKenna joined. There's a very long rant that, Joe. Is that good advice, and will you be ignoring it?
Where was the question in all that?
Mark. I'll give him a shout out at W_Mark. Final position and points forecast. My advice is that we just need to stop thinking about it in terms of. I think there's bigger. I'm going off again, Joe.
Yeah. Well, I think I've sort of said what I think we need to do to get into the playoffs, and now that leaves us needing 6 wins in the last 8 games.
Exactly.
Which I think is going to be too big an ask, because you're going to drop one at one point, aren't you? And I do think we're going to get to. Yeah, I do think we're going to get to 75 points, and I think that McKenna is going to have sort of had 2 points per game for the entirety of his tenure in this season. But I also don't think it's going to be enough to be in the top 6. And I think
so that can't be categorised as a failure.
Oh no, without doubt. If you can come in and do promotion winning form for
half
the best
a season.
Part of half
It'll
a season,
be 23 games. It'll be
23
exactly
games. Well, then you can't ask any more than that. If
with someone else's players as well, Joe.
Yep.
Yeah, and we've sort of we made the squad smaller in January rather than bigger, didn't we? There's only a couple of sort of like for like replacements that came in. But I say if you'd have offered any Ipswich fan 75 points on the day that Kieran McKenna was appointed, saying that we're going to pick up 46 points in the second half of the season, every single one of them would have bit your hand off for that. And if it turns out to not be enough to make the playoffs, well, that's just the luck of the draw this season, isn't it? And it's it's a funny division this year. You've got 6 teams averaging less than a point a game at the bottom of the table, which is that. So I think there's a big gap between the top and the bottom of the table. Yeah,
top, doesn't it?
I think we're going to need 77, 78 points to make the playoffs. I don't think we're going to get there. I think we're going to get to 74, 75, and I think that McKenna's done a fantastic job, and I don't think anyone will be seeing that as a failure. He probably will, because I'm sure he sets himself incredibly high standards, but I don't think anyone within the club or outside the club will be anything but positive with regards to his tenure.
Craig, can I just quickly, before you come in on that, can I just clarify my use of the word failure? Obviously, I'm bound to get someone on Twitter who will go, but it's Ipswich and look at what got spent in the summer, and anything other than promotion is a failure. I'm talking about from where we were to where we're possibly going to get to where we may be heading. That's the thing to be judging now. And yes, we'll get the pushback of, oh look, it's always tomorrow, it's always next week or whatever.
But not just where we were, the sort of fall we were in when you walked through the door as well.
Yes, yeah, quite. And I don't know if you've got an answer for me, Craig. When did we last finish a season strongly?
Oh, crikey. I don't know that one. Well, it hasn't been for the last few, is it? Because we're on the downward trend. It's about the trend, isn't it? As you're sort of saying
exactly.
there, Ben. It's the trend, and the trend is most definitely upwards. And I think if, as Joe says, we do finish outside the playoffs, and it's looking likely now, isn't it, crikey? What Sunderland have played the same amount of games as us and are 6 points ahead. So just to be ahead of Sunderland, we've got to get 6 more points than they do over 8 games. Well, and that's not including the people teams who've got games in hand between us and them, who are probably arguably in better form than Sunderland, if not us. But I think if you look at the league table since McKenna took over, and you can do it on TWTD, they've got like a date range table. You can put in any date, blah blah blah. Since McKenna's joined, I think we're second in the league behind Milton Keynes.
MK have played one more game as well.
Yeah. So that's probably where you want to look. If come the end of the season we finish 8th or 9th, which is probably looking likely by virtue of our start, just type in Boxing Day maybe onwards and see where we're at in relation to everyone else, and see what other teams are in the top 6 along with us there, and you'll see that it's an upward trend. You just got to hope that come the summer and another little mini clear out of probably half a dozen out and half a dozen in, that will be even better drilled over the course of the summer and pre-season to carry on that momentum and that trend come August.
And I think there's an element, like, this was one of the big criticisms I was having of Cook earlier in the season. When people said,
we just Cook, Joe.
Yeah, we just need to go on a run. It's like, I don't think people could see just how far off it we were, how much work was needing to be done. And I don't honestly think that we could, unless he was going to go in the summer, we could have got rid of Cook any quicker than what we did. And look at what it's taken to get us to 9th. Effectively, we're still in 9th. We're not 7th. We're not pushing. We're 9th with teams above us with games in hand, and we've been the form team in the league for 3 months now, and we're still nowhere near it. And that's just shows just how far off we were. We were going absolutely nowhere.
This one, we'll go to Craig first. This is from Alex. Was Burgess better, more composed, effective than Edmondson in his left-sided position?
I don't know. I don't know if I'd say that. Obviously, it's a small sample size. He could have an absolute bloody stinker against Oxford, and we get beaten heavily. I thought he did. I thought he was absolutely fine. As Joe said when he was talking about it, it just looked a more natural balance, didn't it? With 2 left footers on that side of the pitch, it didn't require him to come back inside. Obviously, he's not going to carry the ball as much as Edmondson does. But I say he did perfectly adequately yesterday. He won every one of his headers. He played the ball simply upfield. He played it into the stand if he needed to, if he was under pressure. I thought for a guy who hasn't been anywhere near the team for obvious reasons for a long time, I think his last game was Barrow, wasn't it? Barrow away. I thought he did fine. I think he won't be an issue at all between now and the end of the season. I say it may well be that he does play himself into serious consideration between now and then. He's certainly going to have the opportunity to do so. And at the end of the day, he costs £750,000, so in League One. So
and a 3-year contract.
He's going to have, exactly. We're going to have to use him, and I've got no issue with him being in and around the squad. You can just tell that all that defensive unit, regardless if they're in the team or out of the team, they're just well drilled, aren't they? They know where they should be. They know they're covering for each other. They just look like a well-honed section of the
There's some really interesting comments from McKenna in the press leading up to it about how well he's trained, how sharp he's been, but also along the line of he's making really good contributions in the analysis room about it. Yeah. So it's, like I say, it just seems a much more professional setup we've got there, that they're sitting there having these proper game plan analysis, sitting there, and the players are contributing to these. And like I say, Burgess is obviously an intelligent bloke as well, isn't he? And he sort of understands the game. He's come through at Fulham's academy, which is one of the very good academies in there. He's played international football, I think, for Australia at certain points. So he's not a mug, but he did struggle earlier in the season. I thought he was really poor, and at times earlier in the season. But he looked, like I say, just fitted in like a glove yesterday, really, didn't he? There was no issues at all, and I thought he did well. And I think he's got a good chance to stake a claim for next seasons.
But he struggled in a four. Sorry, Ben. He struggled in a fourth, playing left of a 4-4-2, didn't he? And he often got caught trying to turn, and he was forever trying to chase back the attacker who'd spun him. But it just seemed to be that the way that we're currently set up in the formation that we're playing, obviously he's playing left of a back 3. He'd never found himself in that situation, in that scenario.
Joe, this is one from Andrew. How high on the shopping list should a Morsey replacement be? I assume he means in terms of should Morsey not be around? Does there need to be more strength in central midfield? I hope I haven't misrepresented your question there, Andrew. But what's your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, that's obviously the area where we don't have that backup. But I think Idris El Mazouni would be he's sort of a similar type of player when you can play that role where you get forward. He's a good presser. He gets about well. He can win the ball. He can break forward, carry the ball. He can shoot, which is something that Sam Morsey does struggle with. So
to be fair, sorry, Joe, Andrew does. That's the second part of his question. Could El Mazouni be mentored into that role?
I think you're going to have to, aren't you? Because he signed a contract, so he's got at least another year. I think he might have one more after next. And it's just a case that it's very difficult to sign a player to come in and say, you're going to be sitting behind a guy who will start every single game if they are fit, because they are our captain and our most important player. But I think maybe El Mazzuni, the answer is in-house on that one. It's just it was a shame yesterday because when Carroll came on, that him and Backinson, as Craig said earlier, they're sort of roles they didn't really quite know which role each one wanted. They're all very different, aren't they? When you look at Evans, Carroll, Backinson and Morsey, they're all 4 very different players. That there isn't a like-for-like change for either of them. Like Carroll's sort of quite small and not a ball winner. He's probably got a similar passing range to Lee Evans at the base of it, but he can't then control the midfield physically like Evans can as well. So it's difficult. But I think Backinson is showing some decent signs as well, and I'd be more surprised if he isn't here at the start of next season, Tyreek Backinson. I think he is one that is almost like that was a loan with a view to a transfer. Bristol City don't want him, we do, and I think he'll be here. And I think if you go with what we've got and El Mazzuni in there, and maybe does Carroll get another year? I don't know, but I think we're pretty well stocked there. It's just a shame that El Mazzuni's absent at the same time as Sam Morsey was, because Tom Carroll, as Craig said, he'd been on his sickbed for 2 to 3 days. Apparently, hadn't been there. If El Mazzuni didn't have a knock, he'd have probably been the one on the bench yesterday, and would have come on and maybe staked a claim for himself there. But it's all Sorry, but Joe, I just do wonder whether they're going to get a more natural goal scorer in that Morsey role, and because obviously it's unnatural for Morsey to play that role, as you can tell he's not naturally getting forward in the box and shooting. He doesn't seem to strike the ball cleanly and goes a little bit to pieces when it's in the box. I just wonder whether they're going to try and get a Tommy Miller type player who is going to score you those chances that Morsey is getting, and just sort of maybe somehow rejig or reconfigure that midfield. You just don't know what's going to happen in the summer. But.
Just real quickly then, last one, and it's kind of a apt one. This is ITFC Fist Pump, talking about shopping lists and next season. Looking towards the summer, are there any standout strikers we should look at? Stockton perhaps, and does Bond move on? Lots of talk about central midfield, but you've both mentioned it today, and Craig will wrap up the questions with this. If Jackson's possibly done and Norwood's possibly done and Piggott's not working, and it'd be very unfair to someone like Cole Stockton to assume that just because we took a prolific striker from a club last season that I think Stockton's an interesting one, isn't he, in respects we probably won't go to the Championship, whereas I think Scott Twine's mentioned in the questions will go to the Championship if MK don't get promoted. But you've got to score goals, haven't you? And maybe that's equally as an important thing to sort out, Craig.
Yeah, well, as we've said previously on the pod, it would just be interesting to see, once McKenna's got a summer and a transfer window, is the type of striker he goes for. I just wonder, as Joe was alluding to earlier, whether he goes for a slightly more clinical Caden Jackson type striker, one who can close defenders down, but also offers you the finishing aspect as well. I don't think, well, we can see that Piggott's doesn't seem to be anywhere near the sort of striker that McKenna wants, not in that mould of striker in any case. I'd be wary about Stockton. I think they'll probably have their sights set higher than a current League One striker, I would have thought. So I think they'll just clear the decks of the strikers that they've currently got, and maybe get in a couple that can, of the same type, that can play that one or two roles, a more active, physical, closing down, defend from the front type striker, just add a bit of pace, and maybe get more goals from that Morsey role that he's currently playing, and maybe get 10 from that role. Hopefully Burns is going to get another 11 from wing back again, but you'd think it was probably unlikely for 2 seasons in a row.
You agree with that, Joe?
Yeah, and I think that the fact that Caden Jackson's been used so heavily, and he's not a Premier League class footballer on the ball, just in any way, shape or form. But ultimately, he has Premier League physicality, doesn't he? He can run, and he can sort of run these high intensity sprints and can put loads of those together. So I'd imagine that's the sort of player you want to get, a player that has that physicality, that they can run at pace, not just someone that can just plod around for 90 minutes.
McKenna's got Marcus Rashford's phone number. He's pretty favourite at the moment.
He's out of favour, isn't he? But it wouldn't surprise if we go Premier League loanee. But I'd imagine, if you think we've got 4 at the moment, Bond, Norwood, Piggott and Jackson, which are all getting a decent amount of game time between them. I think Jackson, maybe, has he done enough to get a contract? I wouldn't be surprised if we do offer him another one, because Piggott, you're going to struggle to get rid of. because he's still got another 2 years left and he's probably earning good money. And that still leaves 2 spaces. Do you go like a Premier League loanee and then try and get someone to drop down for the Championship there, and that gives you 4 to go with, and you just go with a hot hand? Because you can't really carry any more strikes than that. And on the flip side, you also probably don't want to be bringing 3 in one summer. It's quite a big ask to bring 3 strikers in one summer and hope that one of them hits the ground. But yeah, I wouldn't be too disappointed to see Jackson Piggott plus 2 more on top of that.
Great.
You just think guys. That you just sorry, Ben, just quickly. You just think, as Joe's saying there about having the same sort of striker, you just wonder whether they'll have 2 strikers of similar ilk. One will play 70 minutes, run his backside off for 70, bring the next guy in who'll do exactly the same for the last 20, and just play the same way and use the same 2 week in, week out.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. At Blue Monday ITFC, every weekend we put a shout out for questions. Get them in there. Of course, you can ask your questions live on our midweek live streams. They're only available to interact with on YouTube. So please do go over and subscribe on YouTube. If you're old school and just like listening down the podcast feed, wherever you get your podcast, go and give us a 5-star review over there. This will always be free, this content, but if you do feel like you want to donate, you can via the Acast support app. We've got the PayPal thing as well. You can super chat, and we thank all the people that have done that so far. Before we go on to Oxford, I just got something from Richard on the ITFC Women. Town beat Cardiff 3-0 with goals from Zoe Barrett, 2 for inform Anna Gray. A good day for the Tractor Girls as their title rivals both dropped points, swinging the momentum in their favour. Southampton conceded 88th minute equaliser to Bridgewater, and MK Dons beat Oxford. From next weekend, Southampton have 5 games in 15 days coming at them with ITFC at the end of March. Next up for Town, West Ham in the FA Cup quarterfinals next Sunday lunchtime. A sellout, but live on the BBC Red Button. And go and follow Rich at Ipswich. He's really giving the women's content a push for our platform here, and lots of good stuff going on there. Lots of good stuff going on at Oxford, though, as well, Joe, where we're going to be visiting next Saturday. And forgive me, I know there are games on Tuesday. Do Oxford play? They do not. So let me just bang through this. So Wickham will play on Tuesday. Charlton Gillingham, Sheffield Wednesday. Plymouth will play Pompey, which is a very interesting one in terms of us. Rotherham, Wigan. So look, most of the top 6, top 8 are playing on Tuesday. Oxford are not. They are in good form. They score loads of goals. They are in 4th in the table. Let me get my maths right here. Playoffs last 2 seasons, Joe. Am I right in saying Oxford, or was it just last season? I don't.
Well, I think they got to the final the year before last, didn't they? And
lost to
then
Wickham, did they? Lost to.
And then they lost to Lincoln.
Season.
Did they lose to Lincoln or Blackpool? Yeah, they lost to one
Lincoln
of those.
Lincoln beat Sunderland, didn't they? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But they goals, isn't it? There at the moment, so it's going to be a very stern test for our defence that we've been waxing lyrical about over. Like I say, but we've got 8 clean sheets in 9 games. Well, they score a lot of goals.
73 they think they're Fulham, Joe.
Carl Robinson knows how to set a team up to score goals, and when you look at recent form, there's a few players in decent form there. 4 goals here,
Taylor.
3 goals there.
Cameron Brannigan.
I think Matt Taylor's got 20 for the season now, hasn't he? So they're going to test our defence, but I don't know. I've got no fear going there, other than getting cold with that stand missing, blowing into it. If it's as wet and windy as it was last time I went there, but so it should be a good game. It's just a shame we didn't win yesterday to really ramp up the sort of pressure on them as well. But they seem to just be pushing on and quietly going about their business and look pretty safe in those playoff positions, bar a big collapse, don't they?
What do you think, Craig?
Yes, they've 43 goals in 19 home games they've scored. So there'll be a good test of, as I say, Joe was saying, we're going on and on about McKenna setting teams up to not even lay a glove on us. Well, next week will be a good test of that. So hopefully, as we said about Morsey, they'll be doing everything they can to get him fit for it. So yeah, it could be. I think those midweek games we'll know exactly where we are, won't we? By Saturday. We could be
I
like
don't want to be a curmudgeon here, Craig.
8 points off the playoffs, couldn't we?
We could be 11th by the end of next week. I'm just looking at it. Bolton have got Crewe, so
we'll be 9th then. Don't worry.
Were Portsmouth to beat Plymouth in midweek, they would obviously move above. So that's a big leap. Plymouth. Let me just bring that home table back.
Just talking about Oxford quickly, they were another team that came to Portman Road and shut up shop and tried to waste time from minute one. And they're a team that are flying at home. They saw it even back then when they played us. They saw it as a place to come to get a point and get out of Dodge.
We've played Oxford 5 times since we've come down into League One, and there's only been 1 goal scored across all 5 games. It's been
really
0-0s, and apart from the only game we lost 1-0 at Portman Road,
I remember
the last game before COVID,
lockdown.
Before lockdown, and they scored and they celebrated by bumping elbows. That's the only goal that's been scored in the 5 meetings between us at this level.
Interesting, very interesting. Look at his face. Just look at his face. Joe, say goodbye to everybody.
See you later, guys.
Craig, say goodbye.
Chisel.
You've been listening and watching to the Blue Monday podcast. Thank you, as ever, everybody, for all your support. Go and get involved. Sign up on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, every single social media that's ever existed. Please get your comments in on YouTube and on Twitter. And we will see you. I'm sure we'll be about in midweek. We'll certainly be about for the preview show. And we'll certainly be about next weekend, where hopefully Joe Fairs will be right. That will be more like 9th or something like that. And I'll be wrong, and we won't be. I didn't say we'd be 11th. I said it was worst case scenario. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching, listening, and we will see you very soon.